Vietnam has already achieved something that many developing nations have spent decades trying to accomplish. In just a single generation, the country has transformed itself into one of Asia's fastest-growing economies. Modern factories now stretch across industrial zones. New highways connect major economic regions. Global companies continue expanding their investments, and millions of people have seen their living standards improve. Yet, economic history teaches us an important lesson. Rapid growth is only the beginning. The real challenge comes after success. Many countries have experienced years of extraordinary economic expansion. Only a handful managed to sustain that momentum and become true economic powers. Behind Vietnam's remarkable progress still lie 5 critical challenges: productivity, innovation, human capital, institutional efficiency, and infrastructure. These are no longer hidden problems. Economists, business leaders, and policymakers have discussed them for years. The real question is no longer whether these barriers exist. The real question is whether Vietnam can overcome them before economic growth begins to slow. History offers both encouraging examples and important warnings. Some countries successfully transformed their economies and continued climbing the global value chain. Others remained trapped despite decades of impressive growth. Vietnam now stands at a similar crossroads. Its future will not be determined simply by how fast the economy grows. It will depend on how effectively the country transforms itself. So this brings us to one defining question. Can Vietnam overcome these barriers and truly become one of Asia's leading economic powers? To answer that question, we first need to understand something even more important. Among all these challenges, which one matters the most?
To answer that question, let's begin with what many people assume. Some believe the biggest obstacle is infrastructure. After all, roads, ports, airports, and railways are the arteries of every modern economy. Without efficient transportation, businesses face higher costs, slower logistics, and reduced competitiveness. Vietnam still has significant work to do in expanding and modernizing its infrastructure. But infrastructure alone has never made a country wealthy. Many nations have built impressive highways and modern airports, yet their economies eventually slowed. Others argue that foreign investment is the key. Vietnam has become one of the world's most attractive destinations for global manufacturers. Companies such as Samsung, Intel, Lego, and many others continue expanding their operations across the country. Foreign investment has created millions of jobs and helped integrate Vietnam into global supply chains. But investment itself is not the final goal. Capital can move. Factories can relocate. Global supply chains can change. Economic strength cannot rely entirely on decisions made outside the country. Perhaps innovation is the missing piece. The ability to develop new technologies, create valuable intellectual property, and move beyond low-cost manufacturing has become increasingly important. Countries that successfully climbed the global value chain invested heavily in research, education, and technological capability. Innovation creates higher value industries. Higher value industries create higher incomes. But even innovation depends on something deeper. It depends on people. A highly skilled workforce can absorb new technologies, improve productivity, and continuously adapt to changing industries. Without talented engineers, researchers, entrepreneurs, and workers, even the most advanced technologies cannot deliver their full potential. So which of these challenges truly sits at the center of everything? Infrastructure? Investment? Innovation? Or human capital? Surprisingly, the answer lies beneath them all. There is one factor that quietly connects every one of these challenges. It is the factor that ultimately determines whether economic growth can continue for decades or eventually begins to slow. Productivity. And understanding why productivity matters so much may completely change the way we think about economic growth.
But what exactly is productivity? At first, the word sounds technical, something economists discuss in reports and government meetings. In reality, productivity is much simpler than that. Imagine 2 factories. Each employs 1,000 workers. Both operate for the same number of hours. Both manufacture similar products. Yet by the end of the year, one factory produces nearly twice as much value as the other. The difference isn't that people worked longer. It isn't that they worked harder. They simply worked smarter. They used better technology, more efficient processes, higher quality skills, better management, and more advanced machinery. That is productivity. Now imagine this principle applied to an entire country. A nation can continue adding more workers for a while. It can continue building more factories. It can continue attracting more investment. But sooner or later, those advantages begin to slow. When that happens, there is only one sustainable source of long-term growth: producing more value with the same amount of labor, capital, and resources. This is exactly why economists often describe productivity as the engine behind lasting prosperity. Countries that continuously improve productivity become wealthier without depending solely on a growing population or endless investment. Countries that fail to improve productivity eventually reach a ceiling. Growth slows, wages stagnate, competitiveness declines. History has shown this pattern many times. Japan experienced decades of extraordinary growth before shifting toward a productivity-driven economy. South Korea invested heavily in education, technology, and industrial upgrading to sustain its development. Singapore transformed itself from a trading port into one of the world's most productive economies through innovation and world-class institutions. Each country followed a different path, but all of them shared one common principle. They created more value from every worker, every company, and every dollar invested. Vietnam has already demonstrated remarkable growth. The next stage of its journey depends on achieving exactly the same transformation. And this is where another important question emerges. If productivity is the foundation of long-term prosperity, what actually drives productivity? Is it better education, smarter government, advanced technology, or something even deeper? That is the question we need to answer next.
If productivity is the engine of long-term growth, what powers that engine? The answer is not a single policy. There is no magic solution. No country has ever transformed its economy by fixing just one problem. Instead, lasting prosperity is built by an entire system working together. Imagine a powerful engine. Even the most advanced engine cannot perform without high-quality fuel. For an economy, that fuel is education. Every skilled engineer, every capable technician, every innovative entrepreneur, every well-trained worker. Together, they create the knowledge and skills that modern industries demand. But fuel alone is not enough. An engine also needs technology. Innovation allows businesses to produce better products, improve efficiency, and compete in global markets. Without innovation, economies eventually rely on lower costs instead of higher value. That strategy rarely lasts forever. Yet even technology cannot reach its full potential without effective institutions. Businesses invest with confidence when regulations are transparent. Entrepreneurs innovate when ideas are protected. Investors expand when policies remain predictable. Strong institutions reduce uncertainty. And uncertainty is one of the greatest enemies of long-term investment. Infrastructure completes another essential part of the system. Modern highways, deep-water ports, reliable power grids, high-speed digital networks. They connect people, businesses, and ideas. They reduce costs, increase efficiency, and allow productivity gains to spread across the entire economy. Finally, there is one more element that often receives less attention: the private sector. Governments can create opportunities, but businesses create value. They invest, they innovate, they hire workers, they compete, and through competition, they continuously improve productivity. This is why the world's most successful economies never rely on a single engine component. They strengthen the entire system. Because when one part falls behind, the entire economy eventually slows with it.
Vietnam has already begun investing in many of these areas. Education is improving. Digital transformation is accelerating. Infrastructure projects are expanding. Technology industries are growing. But the real challenge is not whether these changes are happening. It is whether they can happen fast enough and together. Because in the end, economic transformation is never about building one stronger engine. It is about making sure every part moves in harmony.
So, can Vietnam overcome these barriers and truly become one of Asia's leading economic powers? The answer is yes, but not because the country has already solved its biggest challenges. The answer is yes, because Vietnam has already demonstrated something equally important: the ability to adapt. Over the past several decades, Vietnam has transformed from a largely agricultural economy into one of the world's fastest-growing manufacturing hubs. It has attracted global investment, expanded modern infrastructure, integrated into international supply chains, and steadily improved the lives of millions of people. Those achievements should not be underestimated. But the next chapter will demand something fundamentally different. The question is no longer how quickly Vietnam can grow. It is how effectively Vietnam can improve the quality of that growth. Because future prosperity will not be determined by building more factories alone, or attracting more investment, or constructing more highways. It will depend on creating more value from every worker, every business, and every dollar invested. That is the true meaning of productivity. And ultimately, that is the foundation of every successful economy. History shows that countries rarely become economic powers overnight. They do so by continuously upgrading their people, their institutions, their technology, and their ability to innovate. Vietnam has already begun that journey. Whether it reaches its destination will depend on the choices made over the next decade. Because every transformation begins with a single question: not whether change is necessary, but where should that transformation begin? And perhaps that is the most important question of all. We'll explore it in the next episode. What should Vietnam transform first?